"Do look there," but the rancher kept staring, and what happened next enraged the entire town. He had spent most of his days on his ranch, tending to the cattle, fixing fences, and working the land that had been in his family for generations. To him, life was simple: wake up early, work hard, care for the animals, and enjoy the peace that came with the wide-open spaces around his home. He was respected in the small town near his ranch because he was honest, dependable, and always willing to lend a hand. Yet there was something about the stretch of forest that bordered his property that always made him uneasy. The forest was dense, dark, and mysterious, with thick trees that blocked out sunlight and a silence that seemed heavier than normal. Many in the town had stories about it, but Jack usually ignored them. People said strange things happened there, that noises could be heard late at night, and some even claimed they had seen figures moving among the trees that shouldn't have been there. Most townspeople avoided the area completely. They warned Jack repeatedly, especially since he lived so close to the edge of the forest. "Don't go there," they said. "There are things you don't want to see." But Jack, though respectful of their warnings, was a man who trusted his own eyes. One evening, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and red, Jack was walking along the fence line near the forest. The wind carried the smell of pine and earth, and the distant lowing of his cows provided a comforting background to the quiet evening. That's when he noticed it. A shadow flickered among the trees, just for a moment, as if something had moved. He stopped and stared, squinting, but there was nothing there when he looked again. Just leaves swaying in the gentle wind, he told himself. Yet a strange feeling crept over him, something he could not explain. The next day, Jack's thoughts kept returning to that shadow. While he worked the fields, his mind wandered to the edge of the forest. He remembered old stories his grandfather used to tell him, stories about people who had disappeared while exploring areas they shouldn't have. His grandfather always said, "Some things are better left alone, Jack. Don't look too hard at what you can't explain." Jack understood the warning, but curiosity had a hold on him. He wanted to know what caused that flicker, what made him feel so uneasy. Over the following days, Jack began spending more time near the forest's edge. He made it part of his daily routine to glance toward the dark line of trees from different points on his ranch. Some mornings the light would fall perfectly, and he could see small movements among the branches, shadows dancing in ways that did not seem natural. Other times, everything was still, yet he felt as if he was being watched. Neighbors started noticing his unusual behavior. "Jack, you've been staring at that forest a lot lately," said Mary Thompson, who lived a few houses down the dirt road. She was friendly and often stopped by to chat, especially about the weather or town news. "Why don't you just leave it alone?" "I don't know, Mary," Jack replied, shrugging. I can't help but look. Something feels off, like there's something happening in there that we don't know about." Mary shook her head and walked away, muttering about how stubborn he could be, but Jack didn't mind. He felt a strange sense of responsibility, like he had to know what was hidden there. As the week went on, Jack's nightly walks along the fence line became longer. The forest seemed to grow darker as the days passed, the shadows deeper, and the silence heavier. Even the usual sounds of birds and crickets seemed quieter when he approached. One night, as he paused to examine the tree line, he thought he saw a figure moving just beyond the trees. He blinked and squinted, but when he focused, it was gone. Jack's heart raced. He was a practical man, not easily frightened, but something about that moment unsettled him. The next morning, Jack shared his concern with his closest friend, Tom Reynolds. Tom had grown up with him, and they had spent countless hours working together on the ranch. "You saw something?" Tom asked, eyebrows raised. "I think so," Jack admitted. "But I can't be sure. It moved too fast and I wasn't close enough to see clearly. I just know something is there, Tom. Something's been happening and no one is talking about it." Tom frowned, then sighed. Jack, maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's just animals or shadows. You've been spending a lot of time worrying about it. Don't let it get into your head." "I can't," Jack said firmly. "I feel like I have to see it for myself. I need to know what's happening on my land." Despite Tom's advice, Jack continued his careful observations. Every morning he would rise before dawn, check on the cattle, and then walk to the forest's edge. Sometimes he would sit quietly, watching for any movement, any sign that something was not right. He started keeping a small notebook, jotting down odd patterns he noticed. The times shadows appeared, strange sounds he heard, and unusual marks on the ground. The town began to talk. Some people were amused by Jack's curiosity, while others grew worried. Rumors spread about why he kept staring at the forest, and soon, even strangers passing through the town heard whispers of the mysterious rancher and the dark trees he watched. One evening, as Jack stood at the fence line watching the forest, a cold wind swept through the fields. The leaves rustled in a way that sounded almost like whispers, and for a moment, Jack felt a shiver run down his spine. But instead of retreating, he squared his shoulders and stared harder. There was a determination in him now, a sense that he could not turn away, no matter the fear or the warnings. Jack's attention to the forest did not go unnoticed by his family. His younger sister, Emily, came to him one afternoon while he was fixing a fence post. "Jack, please," she pleaded. "Why do you keep staring over there? People say things about that place. It's dangerous." "I know what people say, Em," Jack replied gently. "But I've lived here my whole life. I know the land, and something's happening there. I just need to see it for myself." Emily shook her head but did not argue further. She had learned over the years that Jack was stubborn once he set his mind on something. And somehow she trusted that his instincts were rarely wrong. The days turned into weeks, and Jack's obsession with the forest grew. He still tended to his ranch work diligently, but his eyes often strayed to the dark tree line. Neighbors continued to warn him, friends questioned his judgment, and even his own family expressed concern. Yet Jack remained steadfast. There was a quiet intensity in him now, a sense that he was waiting for something, though he didn't yet know what it would be. One night, as the moon cast its silver glow over the fields, Jack walked slowly toward the forest. The wind was still, the night unusually quiet. He paused at the edge of the trees, took a deep breath, and looked into the darkness. For a brief moment, he thought he saw something move just beyond the shadows, and though his heart raced and his mind screamed at him to turn away, Jack did not. He knew that whatever it was, he could not ignore it any longer. That night, as he returned to his home, he felt a strange mix of fear and anticipation. He had no idea what awaited him, but one thing was certain: he could not stop staring. The forest had secrets, and Jack Mercer was determined to uncover them, no matter the cost. The next morning, Jack Mercer woke with the usual early light streaming through his small bedroom window. But something felt different. The forest that bordered his ranch seemed heavier, darker, almost as if it had been waiting for him. He had spent so many days glancing toward those trees, trying to see what moved among the shadows, and now he felt a mixture of excitement and unease. He knew that the townspeople were watching him. Word had spread fast about how he kept staring at the forest, about his nightly walks to the edge, and about the strange notebook he had begun keeping. Many of his neighbors whispered among themselves, debating why Jack would risk attention and worry. By mid-morning, his closest friend, Tom Reynolds, rode over on his old pickup truck, a frown etched across his sun-weathered face. Tom had grown up with Jack, worked side by side on the ranch for decades, and he knew when his friend was about to do something risky. "Jack," Tom called as he climbed out of the truck, dusting off his hands, "I need to know why you keep going to that forest. People are talking. They're worried, and frankly, I don't blame them." Jack leaned on the fence post, his eyes drawn to the edge of the dark tree line. "Tom, I can't explain it, but something isn't right there. I've tried to ignore it, but I can't." There's something hidden in those trees, something no one has seen yet, and I feel responsible for finding out what it is." Tom shook his head, frustration evident. "Responsible? Jack, you're letting curiosity get the better of you. There are plenty of things you can't see, and some things are dangerous to know about. You should focus on the ranch like the rest of us. Don't go poking around where you don't belong." "I know," Jack admitted, "but it's different this time. I can feel it. There's movement, patterns, something deliberate. I have to see it for myself." Tom's frown deepened. He had always admired Jack's courage, but he also knew that sometimes courage bordered on stubbornness. "You're going to get yourself into trouble, Jack. I don't want to see anything happen to you." "I'll be careful," Jack said, more to convince himself than Tom. I can't ignore it anymore." Even as Tom left, Jack felt a mixture of tension and determination building inside him. He spent the day working on the ranch, feeding the cattle, repairing broken fences, and tending to the fields. But every few minutes his eyes drifted toward the forest. The trees seemed to loom closer, the shadows twisting in strange ways, almost as if the forest itself were alive and aware of his attention. By evening, other townspeople began to notice Jack's unusual behavior. Mary Thompson, the friendly neighbor who often stopped by to chat, approached him while he repaired a fence post near the edge of his property. "Jack," she said gently, concern in her voice, "please. You need to leave that forest alone. Everyone knows strange things happen there. People have gone missing and some never come back. Don't let yourself become part of those stories." Jack paused, leaning on his tools. "Mary, I appreciate your concern, I really do, but I can't stop. Something is going on there and I need to see it. I can't explain it." Mary shook her head, worry evident on her face. "You're stubborn, Jack. I don't know why, but I hope you stay safe." Jack watched her walk away, feeling a mix of gratitude and guilt. He didn't want to worry anyone, but he couldn't deny the pull of the forest, the feeling that something important lay hidden among the trees. That night, he decided to take a cautious walk along the edge, carrying only a lantern and his notebook. The moon was bright, casting silver light across the fields, and the air was cool with the scent of pine and earth. He moved slowly, carefully, listening to every sound, the rustle of leaves, the distant hoot of an owl, and the occasional snap of a twig. Each sound made him more alert, more aware of the forest's mysteries. As he reached a clearing near the tree line, he froze. For a moment, it seemed as if the shadows shifted intentionally, moving in ways that didn't match the wind or the usual sway of branches. He took a deep breath, raising his lantern slightly, and thought he saw a figure, brief, shadowy, and unrecognizable, moving behind the trees. His heart raced, but he held his ground, scribbling notes in his notebook. "This isn't imagination," he whispered to himself. "Something is happening here." The next day, Jack shared his observations with Tom once again. Tom listened quietly, concern etched on his face. "Jack, if what you say is true, then that forest is hiding something serious. But we need proof, not just shadows. You can't confront anything blindly." Jack nodded, understanding the caution, but he was also more determined than ever. He began to pay even closer attention, marking times, noting patterns, and trying to understand the movements he saw. Slowly, he began noticing signs that someone, or something, was using the forest deliberately. Footprints, broken branches, and unusual disturbances in the undergrowth suggested human activity, but he could not yet tell what kind. As days passed, the town's anxiety grew. Neighbors stopped by more often, offering warnings or advice. Some whispered about old legends, stories of disappearances, strange lights, and eerie noises that had occurred decades ago. Others were skeptical, thinking Jack was letting his imagination run wild. But Jack didn't care about gossip. He only cared about finding the truth. One afternoon, Emily, his younger sister, came to check on him. She was worried because Jack had become increasingly obsessed with the forest, often neglecting other responsibilities on the ranch. "Jack, you have to stop," she said softly, standing at the edge of the yard. "I'm scared for you. You're not safe going near that forest all the time. Please just take a step back." Jack looked at her, his eyes steady. I know you're worried. I am too. But there's something happening there and I can't ignore it. I feel like it's my responsibility to see it, to understand it." Emily sighed, knowing that Jack's determination was unshakable. "I just promise me you'll be careful. That's all I ask." "I promise," Jack replied, though he knew his promise meant little. Carefulness only went so far when curiosity had a hold on a person. As the sun began to set, Jack found himself once again at the edge of the forest. The shadows stretched long across the field, and the air was filled with the quiet sounds of the evening. He stayed there for hours, scanning the trees, trying to discern shapes and movements that might reveal the forest's secrets. Suddenly, a noise caught his attention, a soft rustling different from the usual sounds of wildlife. He held his lantern high and moved slowly toward the source. The shadows shifted again, almost as if aware of his presence. Jack's pulse quickened. He was not afraid. He was alert, focused, ready for whatever he might discover. That night he returned home, exhausted but determined. He sat by the fireplace, notebook in hand, reviewing every detail of his observations. He realized that the forest was hiding something deliberate, something that required human effort to conceal. Patterns emerged, strange disturbances that suggested someone had been there recently, and he was determined to uncover it. The townspeople continued to warn him, friends and neighbors pleaded, but Jack remained steadfast. There was a strange energy in the forest, a feeling that something important, even urgent, was being hidden, and Jack knew he couldn't ignore it. He would keep watching, keep recording, and eventually he would uncover the truth. By the end of part 2, Jack's curiosity had grown into a mission. He was no longer just a rancher tending to his land. He was a watchful observer, a man determined to discover what secrets lay hidden in the shadows. The town was anxious, the forest mysterious, and Jack's determination stronger than ever. Whatever awaited him, he knew he could not turn away, for the forest had chosen him as its witness, and Jack Mercer would answer its call. Jack Mercer had been watching the forest for weeks now, keeping careful notes of every unusual movement, every flicker of shadow, and every sound that did not belong to the normal wildlife of the area. His nightly walks and daytime observations had become almost ritualistic, but he felt closer than ever to discovering the truth. The forest, once a simple border to his ranch, had transformed into a puzzle he was determined to solve. He knew that something was being hidden there. He just did not yet know what it was. One crisp morning, Jack rose earlier than usual. A thin mist hovered over the fields, and the sun was just beginning to peek above the horizon, casting pale gold light across his property. He fed the cattle and checked the fences, but his mind was entirely on the forest. He decided that today he would go a little farther than he ever had before, just to see if he could uncover any tangible evidence of what was happening. Jack packed lightly, a lantern, his notebook, a pair of gloves, and a small camera he had borrowed from Tom. He made sure he left the gate to the ranch secure, and then moved cautiously toward the edge of the forest. The air was filled with the earthy smell of pine and damp soil. Birds sang softly in the distance, and the occasional rustle of small animals in the underbrush reminded him that he was not entirely alone. As he approached the tree line, he noticed something he had not seen before, clear signs of recent human activity. Footprints, partially hidden by fallen leaves, led deeper into the forest. Branches were snapped deliberately, forming a rough path that seemed to lead somewhere. Jack crouched down to examine them closely. The marks were fresh, and they suggested that someone had been moving through this part of the forest within the last few days. He took photos with his camera, careful not to disturb anything, and scribbled notes in his notebook. A sudden sound made him freeze. It was the faint crunching of leaves, slow and deliberate. Jack's heart began to race, not with fear but with heightened awareness. He scanned the trees and saw a small group of men moving in the distance. They were dressed in work clothes, carrying tools, and seemed focused on something among the trees. Jack realized immediately that this was not ordinary forestry work. They were doing something in secret. He crouched behind a thick tree trunk, watching carefully. As he observed, Jack noticed barrels tucked among the trees. The barrels were large, metal, and marked with symbols indicating that they contained chemicals. Nearby, several trees had been cut down and the ground showed signs of heavy disturbance. Jack's stomach churned. Whatever was happening here was serious, and it was being hidden deliberately. He scribbled everything into his notebook, taking care to note locations, numbers, and any distinguishing marks on the barrels. Jack's mind raced. Could this be illegal logging, toxic dumping, or something else entirely? Whatever it was clear that the forest's secrets were not natural, they were human-made. His earlier fears about shadows and flickering movement were now confirmed as signs of real wrongdoing. He realized that the mysterious forest had been hiding the town's first glimpse of a crime happening right under their noses. Jack decided to retreat carefully and gather more information before alerting anyone. He moved slowly, making sure not to leave footprints or reveal his presence. Once he reached the edge of his property, he paused, looking back at the forest. For a moment, he felt a strange mix of fear and pride. Fear because the situation was clearly dangerous, and pride because he had found something no one else had dared to notice. The following day, Jack spoke with Tom, showing him the photos and describing what he had witnessed. Tom's eyes widened as he examined the images, and he let out a low whistle. "Jack, this is serious," Tom said, shaking his head. "This isn't just some small secret. These people are breaking the law. You could be in danger just being near this." "I know," Jack replied, his voice steady. "That's why I haven't confronted anyone yet. I needed to be sure, and now I have proof. We need to figure out how to handle this carefully. The town has to know, but we can't just run in blindly." Tom nodded, understanding the need for caution. "We should gather more evidence, document everything, and make sure we're safe. These people don't want to be caught. If they notice you're watching, it could get dangerous." Jack agreed. He spent the next several days observing the forest from a distance, noting patterns in the workers' movements, timing when they appeared, and recording everything in his notebook. The work was meticulous, requiring patience and care, but Jack felt driven by a sense of responsibility. The forest, which had once seemed mysterious and dangerous for reasons unknown, was now a location of crime that needed to be exposed. One afternoon, while surveying from a small hill overlooking the forest, Jack noticed a large truck arriving at the site. Workers unloaded more barrels, moving them carefully into concealed areas among the trees. Jack's stomach tightened. He could see that the operation was larger than he had initially imagined. This was not a simple act of illegal logging or a minor dumping site. It was a coordinated effort to hide something serious. He took notes, careful not to be seen, and documented the truck's license plate for later reference. That evening, Jack shared everything with Emily. She had been worried about him for weeks, watching him become more absorbed in the forest each day. He showed her the photos, maps he had drawn, and notes he had compiled. Emily's eyes widened with concern. "Jack," she said softly, "this is more than I imagined. You've been right all along. This isn't just strange shadows or local legends. Something dangerous is happening, and it's happening right here in our town." "I know," Jack replied. "That's why I can't stop now. We have to figure out what to do next. If the town finds out, people will be angry, but this can't continue. I can't let this go unnoticed." Emily nodded, finally understanding the depth of Jack's concern. She agreed to help him document the situation, carefully recording his observations, taking photographs, and even helping him make sketches of the area. Together, they began to form a plan for how to approach the authorities, while still gathering enough evidence to make a strong case. Over the next week, Jack's efforts intensified. He became more strategic in his approach, observing the forest at different times of day, noting the workers' schedules, and carefully avoiding detection. His determination grew stronger as he realized how serious the situation was. He could no longer view the forest as a mysterious place of shadows. It was now a site of human wrongdoing, and his role was to uncover the truth and protect the land he loved. One morning, Jack finally noticed something that made his heart race. Hidden behind a small cluster of trees, he discovered more barrels than he had expected. Some of them were marked with warnings about toxic chemicals. He realized that the operation was not only illegal but potentially dangerous to the environment and the town itself. This discovery solidified his resolve. He could not turn away, no matter the risk. He carefully documented the scene with photos and detailed notes. By the end of Part 3, Jack had transformed from a curious observer into a man on a mission. He had uncovered evidence of a secret operation in the forest, one that threatened the safety and well-being of his town. The mystery that had begun as flickering shadows and whispers in the trees had now become a real and urgent situation. Jack knew that the next step, revealing the truth to the town, would be challenging and risky, but he was ready. His dedication to the land, the forest, and his community had grown stronger than ever. The forest had finally revealed its secret, and Jack Mercer was determined to act. Whatever consequences awaited, he knew he had done the right thing by paying attention, by observing when others ignored, and by refusing to look away. The time for action was approaching, and Jack's journey to expose the truth was just beginning. By the time Jack Mercer had gathered enough evidence to confirm what was happening in the forest, his resolve had grown stronger than ever. He had photographs, detailed notes, and even a map of the area showing the placement of the barrels and the paths the workers used. The situation was more serious than he had imagined, and he knew that exposing it would not be easy. The people responsible were powerful and would not welcome interference. Yet Jack could not allow the illegal activity to continue, not when it threatened the land, the environment, and the well-being of the entire town. Jack called Tom over early one morning. The sun had just risen, painting the fields in a soft golden light, and a cool breeze carried the earthy smell of damp soil. Jack spread his photos, maps, and notes across the hood of Tom's truck. "Look at this, Tom," he said, pointing to the barrel locations. "They've been dumping chemicals and cutting down trees for weeks. If no one stops them, it could ruin the land and harm people." Tom frowned as he examined the evidence. "Jack, this is serious. These people are big, organized, and dangerous. We have to be careful. We can't just confront them alone. You could get hurt or worse." "I know," Jack said. "That's why I think we need to involve the town. People need to know the truth. If we go together, we have strength in numbers. We have to protect our community." Together, they devised a plan. They would gather key members of the town, present the evidence, and organize a visit to the forest site, making sure to document everything carefully. Jack also reached out to Emily, who eagerly agreed to help. She had seen how dedicated Jack was and understood the importance of his mission. Over the next few days, Jack and Tom went from neighbor to neighbor, sharing their observations and photos. At first, some townspeople were skeptical, believing it might be a misunderstanding. But as Jack and Tom explained what they had seen, showing maps, sketches, and photographs, skepticism turned into shock and anger. The town had trusted the safety of the forest, never imagining that illegal dumping and cutting had been happening in secrecy. Finally, a group of concerned citizens gathered, their faces filled with determination and concern. Jack spoke to them in a calm, steady voice. "We have evidence that a company is dumping chemicals and cutting trees illegally in the forest." This is happening right on our land, and it threatens our town. We need to act together to stop it." The townspeople were enraged. They had relied on the beauty and safety of the forest for generations, and now they realized someone had been abusing it in secret. People voiced their outrage, asking how such a thing could have happened without anyone noticing. Many were angry at the company, but some were also frustrated that it had taken Jack's vigilance to uncover the crime. The next step was confrontation. Jack, Tom, Emily, and a few trusted townspeople carefully approached the forest, documenting everything along the way. They moved quietly, making sure to note every barrel, every cleared patch of land, and every worker present. The company employees were surprised to see them and initially tried to dismiss the group, claiming they were performing legal forestry work. Jack stepped forward, holding up his photographs. "We have proof of illegal activity," he said firmly. "These barrels contain toxic chemicals, and the logging here is not permitted. You are breaking the law, and we will report this to the authorities if it does not stop immediately." The workers hesitated, clearly unsure how to respond. Some tried to argue, insisting they were following orders, while others avoided eye contact, clearly uneasy. The townspeople stood united behind Jack, their numbers and determination evident. The presence of the community made it difficult for the company employees to act aggressively or try to intimidate Jack and the others. Jack continued documenting the site, taking photographs of the barrels and the cleared trees. Emily took notes, recording the exact locations and details of the operation. Tom kept watch for anyone approaching from the nearby roads. Together, they had formed an organized team, moving carefully and strategically to ensure they captured every detail. Once the evidence was thoroughly documented, Jack called the local authorities. He explained the situation calmly, detailing the illegal dumping, the hazardous materials, and the environmental threat. By the time law enforcement arrived, the townspeople had already formed a strong presence at the site, making it clear that the community was united in holding the company accountable. The company attempted to deny wrongdoing, but the clear photographic evidence and eyewitness accounts made it impossible to ignore. Authorities began questioning the workers, who reluctantly admitted that they had been instructed to conceal the dumping and logging activities. The operation was quickly shut down, and the barrels were safely removed from the forest. Environmental experts arrived to assess the damage and ensure that any potential contamination was contained. The town erupted with relief and pride. What had begun as a quiet suspicion in Jack's mind had grown into a full-scale exposure of illegal activity. The townspeople praised Jack for his vigilance and courage, acknowledging that without his careful observations and determination, the operation might have continued for months or even years unnoticed. In the days following the confrontation, the town held a meeting to discuss future protection of the forest. Plans were made to monitor the area more closely, ensuring that nothing like this could happen again. Jack, though proud, remained humble. He insisted that the victory was not his alone, but a result of the community coming together to protect their home. Even as the situation stabilized, Jack remained watchful. The forest had revealed its secret, but he knew that vigilance was ongoing. He continued his nightly walks along the edge of the trees, observing carefully, noting any unusual signs, and keeping the land under watch. The experience had taught him that attention, courage, and determination were essential in safeguarding what one loved. Emily and Tom continued to support him, helping to maintain records of the forest and ensuring the community remained aware of its condition. The town, once unaware of the dangers lurking at its border, had become united, ready to act together if threats ever arose again. Jack's actions had not only exposed wrongdoing, but had strengthened the bond of the community. By the end of Part 4, Jack Mercer had transformed completely. He was no longer just a rancher watching shadows. He was a guardian of his land, a man who had faced potential danger, gathered irrefutable evidence, and led the town in confronting those responsible. The confrontation with the company had been tense, challenging, and even frightening, but Jack's careful planning, courage, and determination ensured success. The forest, once a place of mystery and fear, now stood as a symbol of resilience and vigilance. Jack understood that the true power lay in observing, acting with care, and uniting the community. He had stared into the shadows, discovered the truth, and helped the town take action. The experience had changed him, giving him confidence and a deeper sense of responsibility, not just for his land but for the people who called the town home. And though the confrontation was over, Jack knew this was only part of a larger journey. The forest had tested him, revealed secrets, and challenged the town's sense of safety. It had also taught the importance of courage, unity, and persistence. Jack Mercer had faced the unknown, and in doing so, he had protected his community, restored justice, and proved that careful observation, combined with brave action, could make a real difference. After the confrontation with the company, the town slowly began to recover from the shock and anger that had erupted when they learned about the illegal dumping and logging in the forest. What had started as whispers and warnings had transformed into action, and the results were tangible. Jack Mercer's vigilance and courage had not only exposed wrongdoing, but had united the townspeople in a way they had never been before. Everyone understood now that the safety of their environment and their community depended on alertness, courage, and willingness to act, even when it seemed inconvenient or frightening. In the days following the incident, the local authorities worked with environmental experts to assess the damage caused by the company. Soil samples were taken, trees were examined, and the barrels containing chemicals were safely removed from the forest. Jack assisted in this process, pointing out areas where the illegal dumping had been concentrated and ensuring that nothing went unnoticed. He had become a guide and an expert in the eyes of the authorities, someone whose observations and careful documentation had made the investigation far more effective. The town held several community meetings to discuss the future protection of their land. Jack's photos, maps, and notes were displayed for everyone to see, reminding the townspeople of how close they had come to losing a part of their home. People were angry at the company for trying to deceive them, but they were also proud of Jack and those who had helped him bring the truth to light. The meetings were emotional, with many expressing relief, gratitude, and a renewed sense of responsibility for the forest and the environment around them. Jack remained humble despite the praise he received. He never sought recognition or attention. His actions had been driven by a personal sense of duty and care for the land he loved. Yet, as he watched his neighbors, friends, and even strangers come together to restore and protect the forest, he realized the importance of leadership through action. One person's determination had sparked a chain reaction, and the town had responded in unity. It was a lesson he would never forget. Emily, his younger sister, continued to support Jack, helping with monitoring the forest and maintaining records of the investigation. She had seen how much the ordeal had strengthened him and how seriously he took the responsibility of protecting their land. "You've changed the town, Jack," she said one evening as they walked along the edge of the forest. "People will remember this for years." Jack smiled, looking at the thick line of trees that had once filled him with fear and curiosity. "I just did what I had to do," he replied. "But yes, it's amazing to see how everyone came together. The town didn't just trust me, they trusted each other." Over time, the forest began to heal. The authorities set up a monitoring system, and the town worked to restore areas that had been damaged by the illegal activity. Jack helped plant new trees, cleared debris, and ensured that the land was safe for animals and people alike. His connection to the forest had grown even deeper, now rooted not just in curiosity but in responsibility and care. The townspeople also became more vigilant. They organized regular patrols and volunteer groups to watch over the forest, ensuring that any suspicious activity would be noticed immediately. The sense of unity that had grown from this experience strengthened the community in ways that no one had anticipated. Jack often reflected on how a single act of observation had sparked such change. His decision to pay attention, to notice what others ignored, had made a tangible difference in everyone's lives. Local media caught wind of the story, praising Jack and the townspeople for their courage and initiative. Articles highlighted how the community had rallied together, how careful observation and determination had prevented further environmental damage, and how the town had become an example of responsible action. Jack never sought the attention, but he recognized that the story could inspire others to take responsibility for their own communities and surroundings. Despite the success and recognition, Jack continued his nightly walks along the edge of the forest. His eyes scanned the trees, not with fear, but with alertness and respect. He knew that vigilance was ongoing, that the forest and the land he loved would always require attention. Shadows might no longer hide illegal activity, but the sense of responsibility remained. Jack's dedication had become a habit, a part of his identity. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky turned golden and pink, Jack stood at the edge of the forest and looked out across the fields. The air was calm, and the sounds of wildlife were once again dominant. Birds sang from the treetops, crickets chirped in the grass, and a gentle breeze rustled through the leaves. The forest no longer seemed threatening or mysterious. It seemed alive, vibrant, and full of potential. Jack felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that he had helped protect it. The town continued to celebrate their restored forest in small ways. Community cleanup days were organized. Children planted new trees, and educational programs were established to teach future generations about the importance of caring for the environment. Jack often participated, guiding young people, sharing stories of the forest, and encouraging curiosity balanced with caution. He knew the lessons he had learned about observation, courage, and community were just as important as protecting the land itself. Over time, the memory of the illegal activity faded from daily conversation, replaced by pride in the town's unity and vigilance. But for Jack, the experience remained vivid. He never forgot the feeling of standing at the edge of the forest, staring into the shadows, unsure of what he might see. He remembered the adrenaline, the fear, the responsibility, and finally, the relief and satisfaction of having made a difference. It was a story he would carry with him for the rest of his life. Jack's actions also strengthened his relationships within the town. People who had once doubted him now respected his judgment and determination. His reputation as a reliable, observant, and courageous member of the community grew, but Jack remained humble, always deflecting praise to the collective effort of the townspeople. He knew that change and protection were only possible because the community had come together, each person contributing their part. Looking back, Jack realized that the forest had taught him more than he could have imagined. It had shown him the importance of noticing what others overlook, the power of acting responsibly, and the strength that comes from community unity. He understood that vigilance was not just about watching for danger, it was about caring enough to take action when it mattered most. As months passed, life on the ranch returned to a peaceful rhythm. The cattle grazed safely, the fences were repaired, and the fields flourished. Jack still walked to the forest each evening, his lantern sometimes illuminating the paths he had once followed, but now with calm confidence rather than anxiety. He often thought about the shadows, the strange movements, and the flickers of light that had first caught his attention. They had led him to uncover a secret, protect his town, and strengthen the bonds of the community. One evening, as Jack sat on the porch of his home, Emily joined him with a cup of tea. They watched the sunset together, the sky glowing in shades of orange, pink, and purple. "You've done so much, Jack," Emily said softly. "The town owes you more than words can say." Jack shook his head with a small smile. "I didn't do it alone. The town acted together. That's what made the difference. I just happened to notice what others overlooked." Emily nodded, understanding. She realized that Jack's courage and vigilance had been the spark, but the real strength lay in the community working together. The forest had revealed its secret, but the town's response had ensured that it would be protected for generations to come. As darkness fell, the stars emerged one by one, and the forest seemed to settle into a peaceful rhythm. Jack felt a profound sense of accomplishment and contentment. He had faced fear, uncertainty, and danger, yet he had stayed true to his values and instincts. The town was safe, the forest was protected, and his role as a guardian of both had been established. Jack Mercer had stared into the shadows, uncovered the truth, and inspired a community to act. His curiosity and determination had made a real difference. The town had learned a valuable lesson. Vigilance, courage, and unity were powerful tools that could protect what mattered most. And as Jack looked over the fields and the forest he loved, he knew that his vigilance would never fade, for some truths, once seen, could never be ignored.